Imagine this. You wake up one morning and everything feels off. The world around you is the same job, the same relationships, the same routines, but something inside you has shifted. You can't quite put your finger on it, but there's a gnawing sense that the life you've built is a house of cards, teetering on the edge of collapse. You try to shake it off, to distract yourself with the usual comforts, scrolling through your phone, binge watching a show, or losing yourself in the noise of social media. But the feeling persists, like a whisper you can't silence. What if this unease isn't a flaw in your life, but a signal? What if it's your soul's way of telling you that the truth you've been avoiding is finally catching up to you? Here's the paradox. We all claim to want the truth. We say we value honesty, authenticity, and self-awareness. Yet, when faced with the choice between comfort and truth, most of us choose comfort every single time. Why? Why do we cling to the familiar, even when it's killing us? Why do we choose the safety of lies over the chaos of truth? Think about it. How many times have you stayed in a job that drained your spirit because it paid the bills? How many times have you ignored the red flags in a relationship because being alone felt scarier? How many times have you silenced your own voice to avoid conflict or rejection? These are not just small compromises. They are acts of self-betrayal. And yet, we do them without thinking, as if they're the most natural thing in the world. But here's the unsettling truth. Comfort is a trap. It's a seductive illusion that promises safety, but delivers stagnation. It's the warm blanket that keeps you from feeling the cold, but also keeps you from ever stepping outside. And the longer you stay under it, the harder it becomes to leave. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we trade the infinite potential of truth for the finite security of comfort? Is it fear, laziness, or is it something deeper? Something woven into the very fabric of human nature? Consider this. What if the reason we avoid truth isn't just because it's uncomfortable, but because it's dangerous? What if the truth has the power to shatter the illusions we've built our lives around? The illusions of who we are, what we want, and what we're capable of. What if the truth forces us to confront the parts of ourselves we've buried, the dreams we've abandoned, and the lies we've told ourselves to keep going? This is the great question at the heart of the human experience. Why do we prefer comfort over truth? And more importantly, what happens to us, to our lives, our relationships, our sense of self, when we make that choice? The answer is not simple. It's not something you can wrap up in a neat little package and put on a shelf. It's messy, uncomfortable, and deeply personal. But it's also the key to understanding why so many of us feel stuck, lost, or unfulfilled, even when we seem to have everything we thought we wanted. So, let's dive deeper. Let's peel back the layers of this paradox and explore the hidden forces that keep us tethered to comfort, even when it's killing us. Let's examine the psychological and philosophical roots of this behavior, the unseen consequences it has on our lives, and, most importantly, how we can break free from its grip. Because here's the thing. The truth may be uncomfortable, but it's also the only path to freedom. And freedom, real freedom, is worth every ounce of discomfort it takes to get there. But before we can talk about breaking free, we need to understand why we're trapped in the first place. What is it about comfort that makes it so irresistible? And what is it about truth that makes it so terrifying? This is where the journey begins. To understand why we choose comfort over truth, we must first confront a fundamental truth about human nature. We are wired for survival, not for truth. Our brains are not designed to seek out objective reality. They are designed to keep us alive. And sometimes, staying alive means avoiding the truth at all costs. Think about it. When faced with a threat, our instinct is not to analyze it objectively, but to react in a way that minimizes harm. This is the fight or flight response, a primal mechanism that has kept our species alive for millennia. But here's the catch. In the modern world, the threats we face are rarely physical. They are psychological, emotional, and existential. And yet, our brains respond to them in the same way, by seeking safety, even when that safety is an illusion. This is where comfort comes in. Comfort is the psychological equivalent of a safe space. It's a buffer against the chaos and uncertainty of life. It's the warm embrace of familiarity, the soothing hum of routine, the reassuring voice that says, everything is going to be okay. But comfort is also a mask that hides the truth from us, not because the truth is inherently dangerous, but because our brains perceive it as such. Carl Jung called this phenomenon the shadow, the part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge because it contradicts the image we have of who we are. The shadow is not inherently evil or bad. It's simply the parts of us that we've disowned, repressed, or ignored. And yet, it wields immense power over our lives, shaping our thoughts, behaviors, and relationships in ways we don't even realize. When we choose comfort over truth, we are essentially choosing to keep our shadows hidden. We are choosing to live in denial, to cling to the illusion of safety rather than face the discomfort of self-awareness. But here's the problem. The shadow doesn't go away just because we ignore it. It grows stronger, darker, and more insidious until it begins to control us from the shadows. This is why so many of us feel stuck or unfulfilled. We are living in a state of self-deception, refusing to confront the parts of ourselves that need healing. And the longer we stay in this state, the harder it becomes to break free. But the problem goes even deeper than individual psychology. It's also rooted in the very fabric of modern society. Friedrich Nietzsche famously warned of the dangers of herd mentality, the tendency to conform to societal norms and values without questioning them. According to Nietzsche, this conformity is a form of spiritual death, a way of surrendering our individuality in exchange for the illusion of belonging. In today's world, this herd mentality is amplified by technology, consumerism, and social media. We are constantly bombarded with messages that reinforce the importance of comfort, convenience, and conformity. We are told that happiness is just one purchase, one like, or one promotion away. And we are encouraged to avoid anything that might disrupt our carefully curated lives, including the truth. Arthur Schopenhauer understood this dynamic well. He believed that most people live in a state of willing, a constant striving for pleasure, success, and validation. But this striving, he argued, is ultimately futile because it is based on an illusion. The illusion that external achievements can bring lasting fulfillment. The truth, according to Schopenhauer, is that fulfillment comes from within, from self-awareness, self-acceptance, and a willingness to confront the uncomfortable truths of existence. But this requires a level of courage and introspection that most people are unwilling to muster. It requires us to step outside the herd, to question the narratives we've been fed, and to face the void within ourselves. And this is where the real challenge lies. Because the truth is not just uncomfortable, it's also deeply unsettling. It forces us to confront our own mortality, our own limitations, and our own insignificance in the grand scheme of things. It shatters the illusions we've built our lives around, the illusions of control, permanence, and meaning. This is why we cling to comfort. Comfort is a shield against the existential dread that comes with facing the truth. It's a way of numbing ourselves to the pain of existence, of pretending that everything is okay when it's not. But this numbing comes at a cost. It robs us of our vitality, our creativity, and our capacity for growth. It keeps us trapped in a state of spiritual stagnation, unable to move forward or evolve. So, what's the solution? How do we break free from the grip of comfort and embrace the truth? The answer lies in understanding the unseen consequences of our choices, consequences that shape not only our individual lives, but also the world around us. But before we can explore those consequences, we need to ask ourselves, what are we really afraid of? What is it about the truth that terrifies us so much? And what would happen if we stopped running from it? What happens when we choose comfort over truth? At first, it might seem like nothing. Life goes on. The bills get paid, the routines stay intact, and the world keeps spinning. But beneath the surface, something insidious is taking root. The choice to avoid truth doesn't just affect us in the moment. It shapes the trajectory of our lives in ways we can't always see. Let's start with the personal consequences. When we prioritize comfort, we are essentially choosing to live in a state of inauthenticity. We are denying our true selves, our desires, our fears, our potential, in favor of a version of ourselves that feels safer, more acceptable, or more manageable. Over time, this denial creates a rift between who we are and who we pretend to be. It's like wearing a mask so often that you forget what your real face looks like. This rift manifests in subtle but profound ways. It shows up in the relationships that feel hollow, the dreams that gather dust, and the nagging sense that something is missing. It shows up in the anxiety that follows us like a shadow, the depression that lingers like a fog, and the anger that simmers beneath the surface. These are not just random emotions. They are signals that we are out of alignment with our true selves. But the consequences go even deeper. When we avoid truth, we also avoid growth. Growth requires discomfort. It requires us to confront our limitations, challenge our assumptions, and step into the unknown. Without discomfort, there is no growth, only stagnation. And stagnation is the enemy of vitality. It's what turns vibrant, curious children into bored, disillusioned adults. It's what turns passionate, creative individuals into passive consumers of life. This stagnation doesn't just affect us individually, it also affects the world around us. When we choose comfort over truth, we become complicit in the systems and structures that perpetuate suffering. We turn a blind eye to injustice, inequality, and environmental destruction, because confronting these issues would disrupt our comfort. We vote for politicians who promise stability, even when their policies harm the most vulnerable. We buy products that exploit workers and destroy ecosystems because they're cheap and convenient. In other words, our personal choices have collective consequences. Every time we choose comfort over truth, we contribute to a culture of denial, apathy, and complacency. And this culture, in turn, reinforces our own avoidance. It's a vicious cycle, one that keeps us trapped in a state of collective delusion. But perhaps the most insidious consequence of all is the loss of meaning. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, argued that meaning is the primary motivator of human behavior. Without meaning, life becomes empty and purposeless. And yet, meaning cannot be found in comfort. It can only be found in the pursuit of truth, in the willingness to confront the difficult questions, to face the darkness, and to embrace the uncertainty of existence. When we avoid truth, we are essentially choosing to live a meaningless life. We are trading the depth and richness of authentic existence for the shallow pleasures of comfort. And over time, this trade-off takes a toll. It leaves us feeling empty, disconnected, and adrift. But here's the thing. The consequences of avoiding truth are not inevitable. They are the result of choices that we can change. The first step is to recognize the patterns that keep us trapped. These patterns are often rooted in cognitive biases, mental shortcuts that our brains use to simplify complex realities. One of the most powerful of these biases is confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs and ignore information that challenges them. This bias keeps us locked in echo chambers, where our views are constantly reinforced and our blind spots remain hidden. It's why we surround ourselves with people who think like us, consume media that aligns with our worldview, and dismiss anything that makes us uncomfortable. Another powerful bias is loss aversion, the tendency to prefer avoiding losses over acquiring gains. This bias makes us overly cautious, causing us to cling to what we have rather than risk losing it. It's why we stay in unfulfilling jobs, toxic relationships, and stagnant routines. Because the thought of losing them feels scarier than the possibility of finding something better. These biases are not flaws. They are features of the human brain, but they can be overcome. The key is to become aware of them, to recognize when they are influencing our decisions, and to question whether those decisions are truly serving us. The second step is to confront the emotional barriers that keep us from seeking truth. These barriers often take the form of fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. But fear is not the enemy, it's a signal. It's a sign that we are on the edge of growth, that we are about to step outside our comfort zone and into something new. The final step is to cultivate a mindset of curiosity and openness. This means embracing uncertainty, asking difficult questions, and being willing to change our minds. It means seeking out perspectives that challenge our own, engaging in honest self-reflection, and being willing to sit with discomfort. But this is easier said than done. Breaking free from the grip of comfort requires courage, discipline, and a willingness to face the unknown. It requires us to let go of the illusions that have kept us safe and to step into the messy, unpredictable reality of life. And yet, the rewards are worth it, because on the other side of comfort lies truth, and on the other side of truth lies freedom. Breaking free from the grip of comfort is not a one-time event. It's a rebellion, a daily, deliberate act of defiance against the forces that seek to keep us small, safe, and stagnant. It's a commitment to living authentically, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's terrifying, even when it feels like the world is conspiring against you. But how do we start this rebellion? How do we begin to untangle ourselves from the web of comfort and step into the light of truth? The answer lies in a series of radical shifts in perspective, mindset, and behavior that challenge everything we've been taught about how to live. The first shift is from avoidance to curiosity. Most of us have been conditioned to avoid discomfort at all costs. We see it as something to be feared, something to be escaped. But what if we reframed discomfort as an opportunity? What if we saw it as a sign that we're on the edge of growth, that we're about to learn something new? This is the mindset of curiosity. It's the willingness to lean into discomfort, to ask difficult questions, and to explore the unknown. It's the recognition that every moment of discomfort is a chance to expand our understanding of ourselves and the world. Jean-Paul Sartre understood this well. He believed that freedom comes from embracing the uncertainty of existence, from refusing to hide behind the illusions of comfort and security. For Sartre, the act of choosing, even when it's painful, is what defines us as human beings. It's what gives our lives meaning and purpose. The second shift is from external validation to internal alignment. Most of us have been taught to seek approval from others, to measure our worth by our achievements, our possessions, and our social status. But this external validation is a trap. It keeps us chasing after goals that don't align with our true selves, and it leaves us feeling empty and unfulfilled. The alternative is to seek internal alignment, to live in accordance with our values, passions, and authentic desires. This requires us to tune out the noise of societal expectations and tune into the quiet voice within. It requires us to ask ourselves, what do I truly want? What kind of life would feel meaningful to me? And am I willing to pursue it, even if it means going against the grain? This is not an easy shift to make. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to face criticism and rejection. But the rewards are profound. When we live in alignment with our true selves, we experience a sense of wholeness and fulfillment that no amount of external validation can provide. The third shift is from fear to love. Fear is the driving force behind our attachment to comfort. It's what keeps us stuck in unfulfilling jobs, toxic relationships, and stagnant routines. But fear is not the only force at play. There is also love for ourselves, for others, and for life itself. When we act from a place of love, we are no longer driven by the need to avoid pain. Instead, we are motivated by the desire to create, to connect, and to contribute. We are willing to take risks, to make mistakes, and to embrace the messiness of life because we know that it's through these experiences that we grow and evolve. This shift from fear to love is not just a personal transformation. It's a radical act of rebellion against a culture that thrives on fear. It's a refusal to be controlled by the narratives of scarcity, competition, and division. It's a commitment to living from a place of abundance, compassion, and unity. The fourth shift is from passivity to agency. Many of us feel like passive observers of our own lives, as if we're being carried along by forces beyond our control. But the truth is, we have more agency than we realize. We have the power to make choices. Choices about how we spend our time, who we surround ourselves with, and what we focus on. This shift requires us to take responsibility for our lives, to stop blaming external circumstances and start taking action. It requires us to set boundaries, to say no to things that don't align with our values, and to say yes to things that do. It requires us to take risks, to experiment, and to learn from our failures. This is not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about taking small, consistent steps toward the life we want to live, even when it's uncomfortable. The fifth and final shift is from isolation to connection. One of the greatest costs of choosing comfort over truth is the sense of isolation that comes with it. When we avoid truth, we also avoid vulnerability, the willingness to show up as our authentic selves, flaws and all. And without vulnerability, there can be no deep connection. This shift requires us to let down our guard, to share our struggles and our triumphs, and to seek out relationships that are based on honesty and mutual support. It requires us to recognize that we are not alone, that we are all navigating the same messy, beautiful, unpredictable journey of life. These shifts are not easy. They require us to confront our fears, to challenge our assumptions, and to step into the unknown. But they are also incredibly liberating. They allow us to break free from the illusions that have kept us trapped and to embrace the fullness of life. And yet, there is one final realization, one that ties all of these shifts together and gives them meaning. Here it is, the final, most powerful realization. The truth is not something to be feared. It is something to be embraced. It is not a burden to carry, but a gift to unwrap. It is not the enemy of comfort, but the foundation of true freedom. When we choose truth over comfort, we are not choosing pain over pleasure. We are choosing life over stagnation. We are choosing authenticity over illusion. We are choosing freedom over imprisonment. This realization is not just intellectual. It is deeply emotional and spiritual. It is the moment when the pieces of the puzzle finally come together, when the struggles and the sacrifices suddenly make sense. It is the moment when we realize that the discomfort we've been avoiding is not the enemy, it's the path. The truth is that life is messy, unpredictable, and often painful. But it is also beautiful, meaningful, and full of potential. When we embrace the truth, we open ourselves up to the full spectrum of human experience. We allow ourselves to feel deeply, to love fiercely, and to live boldly. This is the ultimate rebellion, to live fully, authentically, and unapologetically in a world that tries to keep us small. It is to say, I will not be defined by my fears, my limitations, or my past. I will not be controlled by the expectations of others or the illusions of comfort. I will choose truth, even when it's hard. I will choose growth, even when it's painful. I will choose life, even when it's messy. And here's the most beautiful part. When we choose truth, we inspire others to do the same. Our courage becomes contagious. Our authenticity becomes a beacon. Our freedom becomes a gift to the world. So, what does this mean for you? It means that the life you've been waiting for is not out of reach. It's not reserved for the lucky, the talented, or the fearless. It's available to you, right here, right now. But you have to choose it. You have to choose truth over comfort, growth over stagnation, and freedom over fear. It won't be easy. There will be moments of doubt, moments of pain, and moments of uncertainty. But there will also be moments of joy, moments of connection, and moments of profound clarity. And in those moments, you will realize that it was all worth it, that the truth was worth the discomfort, the growth was worth the pain, and the freedom was worth the fight. This is your invitation. This is your call to action. This is your moment to step into the light of truth and claim the life you were meant to live.